Day 23. The Taiwan War has crossed threshold into something darker, something more dangerous, something that makes the first 3 weeks look like warm-up for catastrophe to come. 3 American carrier strike groups remain combat effective, but 2 are damaged. Chinese losses exceed 45,000 troops. Japanese cities face nightly missile bombardment. South Korea finally opened bases to American forces. Australia lost 2 warships. India seized 3,000 square kilometers of Chinese territory. Taiwan burns under occupation. Taiwanese resistance kills Chinese soldiers daily. Global economy contracted 9%. Oil reached $178 per barrel, and both nuclear arsenals remain on highest alert since Cuban Missile Crisis. But Day 23 brought the transition everyone feared. The war stopped being conventional conflict with clear boundaries. It became existential struggle where normal rules no longer apply, where desperation overrides rationality, where nuclear weapons shift from deterrent to tactical option. This is not the war as it was. This is the war as it becomes. The dangerous phase, where everything that seemed unthinkable becomes thinkable, where limits dissolve, where survival instinct drives decisions that might end civilization. This is Day 23, and nothing will be the same. The transition began with Chinese decision that changed everything. For 3 weeks, China avoided directly attacking American homeland beyond Guam. Missiles hit Guam repeatedly, but continental United States remained untouched. This was deliberate restraint. Attacking American homeland risked escalation China wanted to avoid. But Day 23. Calculation changed. Chinese leadership concluded that escalation was already complete. War was total. Restraint gained nothing. At 0200 hours Beijing time, Politburo Standing Committee authorized strikes on continental United States. Not with nuclear weapons, with cyber weapons, economic weapons, and unconventional weapons. The decision was not made lightly. 7 hours of debate. But conclusion was unanimous. If war is existential, then all weapons become legitimate. The dangerous phase was officially beginning. First American indication came at 0400 hours Eastern Time. Power grids across northeastern United States simultaneously failed. Not weather-related, not equipment failure. Coordinated cyberattack. Chinese hackers had spent 3 weeks mapping American electrical infrastructure. They identified critical nodes. They positioned malware. Day 23, they activated it. 70 million Americans lost electricity. New York City went dark. Boston, Philadelphia, Baltimore, Washington, D.C. The darkness lasted 14 hours. Emergency generators kept hospitals and critical facilities operating. But 14 hours without power created chaos. Traffic lights failed. Water systems stopped pumping. Communications networks crashed. The cyber attack didn't kill anyone directly, but it demonstrated Chinese capability to cripple American civilian infrastructure at will. This was warfare against American population, not just American military. What's your prediction? Type A if you think this leads to negotiation. Type B if you think this leads to nuclear war. American response came 6 hours later. At 1000 hours Eastern Time, President authorized Operation Dragon Slayer. This was not conventional military strike. This was comprehensive attack on Chinese economy using financial weapons. All Chinese assets in American banking system were seized. $1.4 trillion disappeared from Chinese accounts. American companies in China were ordered to cease operations and evacuate personnel. Technology transfers to China stopped completely. American semiconductors, advanced software, aerospace components, biotechnology. Everything that China needed for modern economy was cut off. More dramatically, America pressured SWIFT international payment system to remove Chinese banks. This was nuclear option of financial warfare. Removing China from SWIFT meant China could not conduct international commerce. No imports, no exports. Economic isolation was complete. This was economic equivalent of nuclear strike. Both sides had now crossed thresholds they previously treated as absolute red lines. Chinese retaliation on day 23 afternoon was devastating. At 1600 hours Beijing time, China announced immediate halt to all rare earth element exports. Not just to America, to everyone. China controls 85% of global rare earth production. These elements are critical for advanced technology manufacturing, electric vehicles, wind turbines, military systems, smartphones, medical equipment. Without rare earths, modern technology industry stops functioning. American military particularly depends on rare earths for weapon systems. Guided missiles, radar systems, electronic warfare equipment, jet engines, all require rare earth elements. China was weaponizing its monopoly. The economic warfare was now targeting foundation of technological civilization. Both sides were destroying the global economy that made both of them wealthy. Mutual economic suicide was underway. If you're enjoying this deep dive into modern warfare, take a moment to hit that subscribe button. Military operations intensified to match economic warfare escalation. Day 23 saw largest aerial combat since World War II. Chinese Air Force launched massive strike attempting to destroy remaining American carriers. 200 aircraft. Mix of J-20 stealth fighters, J-16 multi-role fighters, and H-6K bombers. The strike targeted USS Carl Vinson, operating 300 miles east of Taiwan. American Combat Air Patrol detected the formation at 180 miles. 60 F-A-18 Super Hornets and 20 F-35C Lightning IIs engaged. The air battle lasted 47 minutes. It was slaughter on both sides. American pilots shot down 93 Chinese aircraft. But Chinese overwhelmed American defenses through sheer numbers. 12 F-A-18s were lost, 4 F-35s shot down, and 3 Chinese bombers broke through defensive screen. They launched CJ-20 cruise missiles at Carl Vinson from 100 miles. 18 missiles incoming. Aegis destroyers engaged frantically. 14 missiles destroyed, 4 got through, 2 missed, 2 hit. Carl Vinson suffered moderate damage. Flight operations continued, but at reduced capacity. American carrier power was degraded further. 3 carriers remained operational. None were at full strength. Japanese participation expanded dramatically on day 23. Until now, Japanese operations were limited to defensive actions and support roles. Day 23 brought Japanese offensive strike against Chinese homeland. JASDF F-35s bombed Chinese military installations on Hainan Island. This was first time Japanese forces attacked Chinese territory. The strikes were coordinated with American operations, but they were independently conducted under Japanese command. Chinese response was predictable and terrible. 30 DF-21 missiles struck Japanese bases on Okinawa and Kyushu. Civilian casualties exceeded 200. Japanese cities were under attack. Japanese population faced reality of total war. But instead of breaking Japanese will, the attacks hardened Japanese resolve. Polling showed 86% support for continued operations. Japan was all in on the war. The alliance that hesitated for weeks was now fully committed. Don't miss what comes next. Make sure you're subscribed so you never miss an analysis like this. South Korean decision on day 23 to open bases to American forces was strategic earthquake. For 3 weeks, Seoul refused American base access. This crippled American operations. Day 23. President Yoon reversed policy. American aircraft could operate from Korean bases. American supplies could flow through Korean ports. The decision came after Chinese missile attack hit South Korean merchant vessel by mistake. 32 Korean sailors died. South Korean public opinion shifted dramatically. If Korea was suffering casualties anyway, better to fight alongside allies than die as neutral bystander. The strategic implications were enormous. Korean bases are 400 miles closer to Taiwan than Japanese bases. That 400 miles made difference between sustainable operations and logistically strained operations. American combat effectiveness doubled overnight, but South Korea also became legitimate target for Chinese attacks. Seoul was now in missile range. The war was expanding geographically and intensifying militarily. Australian commitment deepened despite mounting casualties. Day 23 brought third Australian warship loss. HMAS Hobart destroyer sunk by Chinese submarine in South China Sea. 48 Australian sailors died. Australia lost 3 major warships in 3 weeks. This was catastrophic for Australian Navy. But Canberra's response was to increase commitment, not decrease it. Additional F-35 squadrons deployed to Darwin. More submarines sent to combat zone. Australian Special Forces inserted into Taiwan to support resistance operations. Australian government explained the logic simply. If China wins Taiwan War, Australia faces Chinese-dominated Pacific. Better to fight now with allies than later alone. Australian commitment was remarkable. Small nation fighting great power 4,000 miles from home, because strategic calculation demanded it. This was alliance warfare at its finest, but it was also alliance warfare proving enormously costly. Indian operations on Chinese western frontier reached critical point on day 23. Indian Army controlled 3,000 square kilometers of disputed territory, but Chinese reinforcements were arriving. 20,000 troops pulled from Taiwan occupation. Modern equipment, fresh units, Indian forces faced counterattack. At 0600 hours local time, Chinese artillery bombardment began. 200 guns, massed fires on Indian positions. This was largest artillery barrage on Indian forces since 1971 Bangladesh War. Indian casualties in first hour exceeded 300. But Indian forces held positions. Counter-battery fire destroyed 40 Chinese guns. Indian Air Force conducted close air support. Chinese advance was stopped, but the fighting was intense. This was no longer border skirmish. This was conventional warfare between 2 nuclear-armed nations. The danger of escalation to nuclear weapons was acute. One side facing decisive defeat might resort to tactical nukes. The Indian-Chinese front was becoming as dangerous as Taiwan front. What would you have done if commanding Chinese forces facing defeat on 2 fronts? Comment your answer below. Russian position shifted on day 23. Moscow had been carefully neutral, selling weapons to both sides. Day 23 brought Russian decision to actively support China, not with troops, with intelligence and weapons. Russian satellites began providing real-time targeting data to Chinese forces. Russian electronic warfare specialists arrived in China to operate sophisticated jamming equipment. Russian hypersonic missiles were delivered to Chinese military. This was not formal alliance, but it was practical cooperation designed to prevent Chinese defeat. Russian calculation was transparent. Chinese defeat meant American unipolar dominance restored. Better to support China, even at cost of confrontation with America. The war that started as American-Chinese conflict was becoming something larger. Informal coalition of China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea versus America and its Pacific allies. This was not World War III in formal declaration sense, but it was global conflict in practical effect. European position remained frustratingly neutral from American perspective. NATO members condemned Chinese aggression, but refused military support. Day 23 brought European announcement that shocked Washington. European Union would maintain trade relations with both America and China. EU would not join economic warfare. European survival required Chinese trade. Cutting off China meant European economic collapse. American demands for solidarity were rejected. The Atlantic Alliance was dead. NATO existed on paper. In practice, European nations pursued national interests regardless of American preferences. This was devastating diplomatic defeat. American global alliance system that won Cold War, had fractured under pressure of actual great power conflict. America discovered it had fewer true allies than assumed. When war became serious, nations chose survival over solidarity. This kind of detailed tactical breakdown takes hours to research. Subscribe to help us keep making them. The nuclear question became acute on day 23. American intelligence detected Chinese strategic rocket force conducting unusual activities. Missile brigades that normally remained in garrison deployed to field positions. This was behavior associated with preparation for nuclear operations. CIA assessed 40% probability China was preparing limited nuclear strike. Not full strategic exchange. Tactical nuclear weapon against American carrier or base. Limited strike designed to shock America into negotiation without triggering full retaliation. American president faced terrible dilemma. If intelligence was correct and America didn't preempt, American forces faced nuclear attack. If intelligence was wrong and America struck first, America started nuclear war unnecessarily. The nuclear fog of war was thickest it had been since 1962. Both sides feared the other might strike. Both sides prepared to strike first if necessary. This was unstable nuclear crisis superimposed on conventional war. Every hour increased probability of miscalculation. Chinese leadership faced identical nuclear dilemma. American nuclear forces elevated to DEFCON 2. Bomber alert rates increased. Submarine patrols intensified. This looked like preparation for strike. Chinese intelligence assessed 35% probability America was preparing preemptive attack. Politburo debated whether to strike first or wait. Waiting risked American first strike, destroying Chinese nuclear forces. Striking first risked starting nuclear war. China might not survive. The debate lasted 6 hours. No decision was reached. Both sides remained at highest alert. Nuclear weapons that were supposed to deter war were now accelerating war. The stability-instability paradox was proving devastatingly real. Nuclear deterrence prevented total war, but enabled proxy conflicts that could escalate to nuclear exchange anyway. Taiwanese resistance intensified on day 23. 3 weeks of Chinese occupation created organized insurgency. Taiwanese resistance fighters conducted 15 attacks in single day. IEDs killed 43 Chinese soldiers. Sniper attacks killed 17 more. Ambushes destroyed 6 Chinese military vehicles. Chinese reprisals killed 80 Taiwanese civilians in collective punishment. The occupation was becoming counterinsurgency that China was losing. Taiwan was conquered but not pacified. Every day of occupation cost Chinese lives and resources. American special forces operating covertly in Taiwan provided training and weapons to resistance. This was Afghanistan in reverse. Instead of America facing insurgency, China faced insurgency supported by American resources. Chinese military killed Taiwanese fighters. More appeared, killed those. Even more appeared. Insurgency math was unforgiving. Occupiers needed perfect success rate. Resistance only needed occasional success to sustain operations. China was learning brutal lesson about difference between conquering territory and controlling population. Your engagement directly shapes what we cover next. Drop a comment and subscribe. Space warfare reached new destructive phase on day 23. Total of 27 satellites destroyed by both sides. American GPS constellation degraded to 60% capability. Chinese Beidou navigation degraded to 45% capability. Communication satellites suffered similar attrition. The debris field created by destroyed satellites was creating hazards for all remaining satellites. Kessler Syndrome was accelerating. Cascade of collisions, creating more debris, creating more collisions. In 5 years, low Earth orbit might be unusable. Both sides understood this. Both sides continued destroying satellites anyway. Short-term military advantage outweighed long-term consequences. Future generations would curse these decisions. But present military commanders fought with weapons available regardless of long-term costs. Space was being rendered unusable for generations to satisfy immediate tactical requirements. Cyber warfare evolved beyond infrastructure attacks. Day 23 brought attacks on civilian populations' information environment. Chinese hackers compromised American media websites. Fake news articles appeared, claiming American government was considering surrender. Stock market manipulation caused additional crashes. American hackers retaliated by compromising Chinese social media. Posts appeared, calling for Xi Jinping's overthrow. Government corruption exposés flooded Chinese internet. Both sides were conducting information warfare designed to break enemy populations' will. This was psychological operations at massive scale. The truth became impossible to determine. Everything was propaganda. Nothing was certain. Public opinion in both countries was being manipulated by enemy cyber operations. Democracy and authoritarian control both proved vulnerable to information warfare in different ways. Economic damage assessment on day 23 showed catastrophic numbers. Global GDP contracted 9%. This exceeded Great Recession of 2008. Stock markets worldwide lost $15 trillion in value. American economy shrank 11%. Chinese economy shrank 13%. Japanese economy shrank 8%. South Korean economy shrank 7%. Every economy involved in conflict was suffering, but economic damage extended far beyond combatants. Developing nations faced starvation as food supply chains collapsed. Humanitarian catastrophes multiplied in Africa and Asia. The war between America and China was killing people worldwide through second and third order effects. Global interconnected economy meant local war became global disaster. Economists estimated recovery would take 15 years. That assumed war ended soon. If war continued another 3 months, recovery might take 30 years. If you made it this far, you're the core of our community. Like, subscribe and hit that bell. Diplomatic efforts intensified, but achieved nothing. Switzerland attempted mediation. Both sides rejected Swiss proposals. UN Secretary General called for immediate ceasefire. Both sides ignored him. Vatican sent envoys to both capitals. Both rejected compromise. The problem was not lack of diplomatic creativity. Problem was incompatible war aims. America demanded Chinese withdrawal from Taiwan and restoration of status quo ante. China demanded American recognition of Taiwan as Chinese territory and withdrawal of forces from Western Pacific. Neither side would budge. Both sides had suffered too much to accept defeat. Tens of thousands dead, trillions in economic damage, nuclear forces on alert. Allies committed. Both nations were locked into conflict. Neither could win, but neither would lose. This was strategic deadlock approaching nuclear resolution. The dangerous phase was not single event. It was accumulation of escalations, creating qualitatively different war. First 3 weeks were conventional conflict with implied rules. Both sides avoided certain targets, observed some restraints, maintained communication channels. Day 23 marked end of restraint. Power grids attacked. Financial systems weaponized. Rare earth exports halted. Nuclear forces prepared for possible use. The war stopped being limited conflict and became existential struggle. When wars become existential, normal calculations fail. When survival is at stake, all weapons become usable. When desperation overrides rationality, nuclear weapons shift from deterrent to instrument of policy. This was dangerous phase, where conventional war reaches its limits and nuclear war becomes logical next step. Day 23 ended without nuclear exchange, but it ended with both sides closer to nuclear use than at any time since war began. American intelligence estimated 40% probability of nuclear weapon use within next 7 days. Chinese intelligence estimated similar probability. Both sides were preparing. Both sides were hoping to avoid it. But hope is not strategy. Hope does not prevent war. Hope is what desperate people cling to when reality exceeds their ability to control. Day 23 was day hope started dying. Day 24 might be the day hope dies completely. The dangerous phase was just beginning. The worst was yet to come. War over Taiwan entered dangerous phase. 3 weeks of conventional combat exhausted both militaries, but achieved no decisive victory. Chinese controlled Taiwan, but faced costly insurgency. American naval power was degraded, but not defeated. Nuclear forces on both sides prepared for possible use. Global economy was collapsing. Civilian populations suffered. Allies were committed but wavering. Neither side would compromise. Neither side could win conventionally. Nuclear weapons were becoming thinkable option, not unthinkable taboo. This was how limited wars become unlimited disasters. This was how regional conflicts become global catastrophes. This was how nuclear deterrence fails. Not through deliberate decision to start nuclear war. Through accumulated pressures and escalatory dynamics that make nuclear use seem rational compared to alternatives. The dangerous phase was reality. The nuclear phase was approaching. And nobody knew how to stop the progression toward Armageddon. Day 23. The war transformed. The danger intensified. The end approached. But which end? Negotiated peace, conventional stalemate, or nuclear holocaust? Day 24 would provide answers. The world waited and prayed because nothing else was left.